What comes to mind when you think about United Arab Emirates? Well, most likely Dubai. Shiny skyscrapers, luxury hotels, exotic cars, and most notably, insane amounts of oil and gas wealth. But behind this glitz lies a brutal reality. The UAE houses nearly 11 million people in an environment that is, to say the least, hostile to modern civilization. The Arabian Peninsula has virtually no freshwater reserves, and the scorching heat requires air conditioning for basically every single square foot. As you can imagine, keeping this society running comes with a massive price tag. The Emirates are in desperate need of a cheap and non-stop supply of electricity. The solution seems obvious: just cover the desert in solar panels and boom, problem solved. But then you see headlines like these. In cooperation with South Korea, the Emirates built one of the largest nuclear power plants in the world. Right here, in the middle of the desert. A place where nuclear energy seemingly makes zero sense. Why would a nation bathing in sun and sitting on oceans of oil spend a whopping $32 billion on nuclear power? In this video, we want to focus on the real limitations of solar energy in the desert, and why introducing nuclear power was a very strategic move. You'll see very soon that this story isn't about wishful thinking, but simple physics and economics. On paper, the Emirates seemingly have the ideal conditions for massive solar power capacity. First, there is the weather. While Central Europe gets around 1600 hours of sunshine a year, the Emirates more than doubled that with over 3500 hours a year. More sunlight means more power generation and lower costs. And then there is space. The UAE has vast areas of underdeveloped desert land. So you might have heard of figures close to just 1 cent per kilowatt hour for solar power generation in desert regions. On paper, the math seems very simple. But the ideal weather comes with a catch. Lots of sunshine correlates with extreme heat, and solar panels absolutely hate heat. Photovoltaic cells operate at a peak efficiency at a surface temperature of 25 degrees Celsius. For every degree above that, you face a power loss of about 0.4%. Now that might not sound like a lot, but it adds up quickly when surface temperatures in the Arabian desert can occasionally soar to 80 degrees Celsius. That leaves the system with a massive 22% drop in power output, not to mention a significantly shorter lifespan just from the heat alone. And then there are sandstorms, which are arguably even worse than the heat. Strong desert winds carry massive amounts of fine dust and sand. These sandstorms leave heavy residues on the panels, which rapidly block the sunlight. Now the Emirates don't clean these giant fields with water and a toothbrush. Instead, they deploy advanced automated cleaning robots that brush the panels dry every single night. But this high-tech solution comes with a major system cost. Dragging brushes over dust and sand night after night acts like sandpaper. It causes severe mechanical wear on the glass surfaces, degrading the panels over time. This constant maintenance dramatically increases operational expenses and shortens the system lifespan, even before we look at the power grid itself. Things get even more complicated when we look at the actual balance between power supply and demand. Solar power works great during the day, but generation plummets to zero from dusk to dawn. The Emirates, however, rely on a 24/7 fail-safe power supply, largely driven by two critical factors. First, there's air conditioning. ACs are the very foundation of life in the Emirates, but a cooling system is useless if it only works while the sun is up, leaving you soaked in your own sweat at night. Second, there's water desalination. As we mentioned before, the Emirates have virtually no natural fresh water. They solve this by running enormous desalination facilities, turning the salty water of the Persian Gulf into drinking water. These facilities are incredibly power hungry and must operate around the clock. A disruption in the water supply is simply not an option. So why not just store the excess daytime solar power in batteries? Well, unfortunately, the math doesn't really add up. To cover the nighttime gap, you wouldn't just need to build massive extra solar capacity. The battery storage alone would come with an astronomical price tag. We are talking about a scale that hasn't been realized anywhere on Earth. Suddenly, we're no longer talking about 1 cent per kilowatt hour, we're talking about prices that are completely uncompetitive. Now, don't get me wrong, solar power already accounts for nearly 10% of the UAE's electricity generation, and there's still massive potential to unleash, but we just have to be realistic. Solar alone cannot secure the grid. Not now and not in the near future. The Emirates are filthy rich in oil and gas. However, this hasn't stopped them from investing heavily into green energy projects. And their motivation is threefold. First, to lower carbon emissions, which are among the highest per capita in the world. Second, to diversify the means of power generation. And third, to position themselves as a global hub for advanced technologies. Considering the unique circumstances of the Emirates we just discussed, nuclear power quickly emerges as the logical choice. It operates on a level that other renewable sources can only dream of, both in terms of sheer power output and constant availability. That's where South Korea enters the equation. In December 2009, the Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation awarded South Korea's KEPCO the contract to build 4 APR-1400 nuclear reactors. As the name suggests, each reactor delivers a power output of 1400 megawatts, resulting in a massive 5600 megawatts facility now secures 25% of the nation's electricity demand around the clock. The Barakah Nuclear Power Plant operates at a load factor exceeding 90%. This makes it perfectly suited for a country in desperate need of a non-stop power supply. And we're no longer just talking about air conditioning and water desalination. The Emirates have become a major player in a global race for new data centers. What was once thought to be a means of securing national survival has transformed into a massive competitive advantage in a world where energy prices are soaring. This baseline efficiency becomes even more impressive when you look at the physical footprint. The entire power plant was built on an area of just 3 to 4 square kilometers. To put this into perspective, to generate the exact same amount of annual power using solar energy, you will need an area equivalent to over 56,000 football fields. Let's talk about the dark side though. The Barakah Nuclear Power Plant came with a massive price tag, amounting to roughly $32 billion by the time of completion. That sounds like an astronomical figure, but when you break down the economics, it's actually a highly rational investment. The biggest cost factor in nuclear energy lies entirely in the construction phase and upfront financing. From the start of construction to commercial operation, it took an average of 9 years to complete each reactor. That means 9 years of zero earnings combined with heavy interest payments. But here's the turning point. Once completed, nuclear power operates on an incredibly cheap level. And this advantage grows even larger the longer the plant stays in service. Nuclear power plants are typically paid off after 25 to 30 years. After being paid off, they generate emission-free electricity around the clock for a staggering 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour. The choice becomes even more obvious when you consider the opportunity cost. Every single cubic meter of natural gas that the Emirates do not have to burn for domestic electricity can now be exported on the global market and turned into cold hard cash. Looking at all these factors, the Emirates didn't just make a wise move from a technological standpoint, it was a masterclass in economics. They laid an energy foundation that doesn't just cover their basic needs, but allows them to compete at the absolute highest level for decades to come. We've just seen that the construction of the Barakah nuclear power plant made perfect sense from both a technological and economic standpoint. So why stop at 25% coverage? If the technology is so superior, why not even build more? Well, if you paid attention to the news recently, you might have come across a deeply concerning report. On May 17th, pro-Iranian groups based in Iraq launched a coordinated drone attack on the Barakah nuclear power plant. While 2 drones were successfully intercepted, A third one managed to strike an external electrical generator. The hit triggered an immediate startup of the facility's emergency generators, allowing the reactor to remain fully operational without a single second of grid interruption. For many of us, headlines like these are shocking, instantly triggering memories of disasters like in Chernobyl or Fukushima. But in reality, this attack proved the exact opposite. Modern redundancy and safety measures have become incredibly sophisticated. You see, the heart of a modern APR 1400 reactor is encased in a massive steel-reinforced concrete containment building. These domes aren't just built to hold pressure inside, they are physically engineered to withstand a direct intentional impact from a fully loaded commercial airliner without breaching. Compared to that, a small drone attack never stood the slightest chance of causing a nuclear catastrophe. However, when you build a nuclear power plant in a region as volatile as the Middle East, the equation is no longer just about megawatts and dollars, it's about missiles and drones as well. Nations like the UAE cannot afford to look at their energy architecture in isolation. It is inherently tied to their national security architecture. And when it comes to the Emirates, they definitely did their homework. They have created an incredibly resilient hybrid energy ecosystem. They combine the rigid, unstoppable foundation of nuclear power for 24/7 baseline demand with cheap, massive solar capacity to shave off the brutal daytime peaks driven by air conditioning. And to tie it all together, they maintain a highly flexible natural gas plants that can be throttled up or down in a matter of a few minutes if a part of the grid suddenly goes offline. But a bulletproof energy architecture requires a literal bulletproof defense. This is why the Emirates didn't just buy reactors, they invested heavily in cutting-edge fighter jets, elite cybersecurity, and some of the most advanced air defense systems on Earth. They built one of the most capable militaries in the region for a single reason. If you want to compete at the absolute highest level, you cannot rely on wishful thinking. You have to make the entire foundation indestructible. The energy strategy of the Emirates shows us one thing. A successful transition into the future isn't just about romanticizing a single technology. It's about building a bulletproof, diversified system that balances physics, economics, and national security. They proved that solar and nuclear don't have to be enemies. In fact, in a volatile world, they might be each other's best life insurance. But what do you think? Is a mix of solar and nuclear the best way forward? Or is this setup just too fragile for the Middle East? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more system level analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.